He was baptized Billy Lee Shoemaker, but he was always known as the Shoe. Among the greatest jockeys in the history of horse racing, his riding career spanned 41 years. It was here at Golden Gate Fields in Northern California that the Shoe rode his first race on March 19, 1949. In his third career race on April 20th, he went to the winner's circle on Shafter V. By the time he made his last ride, February 3rd, 1990, Bill Shoemaker was a legend. He retired as the sport's all-time winningest jockey, 8,833 wins from 40,350 mounts. Shoemaker won 18 riding championships at Hollywood Park, and from 1951 through 1967, he rode to 17 consecutive titles at Santa Anita. The Shoe won 1,009 stakes races, 257 of those worth over $100,000. He captured thoroughbred racing's first $1 million race, the 1981 Arlington Million on John Henry in a photo finish. He led the nation's jockeys in victories 5 times and in earnings 10 times. He was the first rider ever to surpass the $100 million mark in purse earnings and retired with a total of more than $123 million. In 1958, he was elected to racing's Hall of Fame. And remarkably, Shoe had ridden over half the horses enshrined in the hall at that time. The sport presented Bill its highest honor, the Eclipse Award of Merit in 1981, one of 3 Eclipse Awards he earned during his career. But with all those accomplishments, these 4 trophies meant the most to the Shoe. These were his prizes for winning 4 Kentucky Derbies. Bill Shoemaker rode for the Roses a record 26 times, from 1952 through 1988.
I didn't realize I'd ridden that many Derby winners. And I probably should have had maybe 2 or 3 more winners in the Derby circumstances got me beat.
Coming up, Bill Shoemaker's Derby Shoes on Run for the Roses. No jockey was ever less of a distraction on a racehorse's back than Bill Shoemaker. And no one could analyze a race better. Here's how the man that rode in a record 26 Derbies describes the Run for the Roses.
When you have a big field like they usually do, you got to have some luck going into that first turn and getting a position and not getting knocked around or boxed in, and all those things are what count. You know, it makes a difference sometimes between winning and losing the Derby. And then on the second turn, depending on what kind of position you had. If you were laying 1, 2, 3, it wasn't too bad, you know. But if you came from way back, that was sometimes difficult to save ground and still maintain your position and have a smooth trip on your horse.
The Kentucky Derby is not America's oldest race. It's not the richest, but it has always been the most emotional.
Well, I always thought it was, yeah, and especially when you came out and they started playing My Old Kentucky Home and singing it, you got a little lump in your throat, you know, when they did that.
It was early in the decade of the 1950s when Shoe first heard them sing that song at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May.
Well, I think the first year I rode in the Derby was 1952, and I really wanted to ride in. I hadn't been riding but a couple of years, 3 years, I think. I really wanted to mount in it, so Harry got me a mount, and I was tickled to death. I was thrilled to be able to go back to Kentucky.
Kilgale won the Roses for Calumet Farm in that 1952 Derby. It was the 5th and final Derby victory for legendary jockey Eddie Arcaro. The young Shoemaker on Count Flame finished 5th, beaten 12.5 lengths in his first Derby. For the next 15 consecutive years, through 1967, the shoe always had a Derby mount. In his second Derby in 1953, Shoemaker hit the board on a 40-to-1 long shot named Invigorator. He finished third behind Dark Star, who upset the undefeated favorite, Native Dancer.
Native Dancer came running around me, and he didn't look like he was running that good. So Eric dropped over in front of me, shut me off a little bit, which was all right. I didn't think I had a chance to win, but he ran a very good race that day, Invigorator.
In 1954, Bill Shoemaker felt what it was like to go to the post on the Kentucky Derby favorite. But correlation and the shoe disappointed, finishing sixth. Then came Swaps, the California bred who dominated the West Coast in the spring of 1955.
Well, Swaps, I think he won 3 races as a 2-year-old, and I didn't ride him until late in the year at Santa Anita, right before the 1st of January. I think the 28th of November, I think I rode him in a sprint race, going 6 furlongs, first time I rode him. And he won that race, and I knew that he was a good horse then.
Owned by Rex Ellsworth and trained by Mesh Tenney, Swaps was sent off as the Derby's second choice behind the favorite Nashua.
Well, Swaps broke really good, and I was going to try to lay about third on him. So I looked around after we'd come out of the gate about 70 yards. Everybody was taken back, so I just let Swap ease onto the lead, and he was just kind of looking around, pricking his ears, and going real easy all the way. And when I got to the half-mile pole, I was saying to myself, if they let me go like this, just another 1/8 of a mile, they're not going to catch me. And they did, just before the quarter pole and just past the quarter pole. And he was riding Nashua pretty hard right then. And I had never really asked Swaps to run. So in the stretch when I asked him, he opened up and won by 1.5 lengths, I think it was.
They're turning for home, and who's the leader? Swaps is out there. Willie's got him going good. He's about 3/4 of a length in front of Nashua. Swaps, Nashua on the outside trying hard, but Shoemaker's got Swaps in hand, now leads by 2 lengths with a 1/16 to go. Swaps and Nashua battling down the Churchill down stretch in the Kentucky Derby, and here comes the finish. It's going to be Swaps winning 1.5 lengths. Nashua second, Summer 10 third. A front-running score for Willie Shoemaker on Swaps in the 1955 Kentucky Derby.
In his 4th run for the Roses, the shoe won his first Derby trophy.
It was a great feeling. I think I was in shock. It really didn't hit me until probably the next day. But it was a wonderful feeling to know that you won the Derby, that I'd won the Derby. And I remember, as I said before, I just wonder, just riding it was a big thrill for me. But to win it was a triple thrill.
As high as Bill Shoemaker was in 1955, winning his first Kentucky Derby, it didn't come close to the low he would feel in the 1957 Derby. 1957, and that 83rd Kentucky Derby will long be remembered by jockey Bill Shoemaker and others for the quality of those who ran.
That might have been the best field of any Derby ever run, because there's about 5 horses in there were really, really top horses. And they all proved it the next year because they all won big stake races as 4-year-olds all over the country.
The race came down to this dramatic stretch drive, with Shoemaker on the outside on Gallant Man and Bill Hartack on the inside riding Iron Liege. Deep in the stretch, with Gallant Man on the lead, Shoe, thinking he had reached the finish line, raised up.
The mistake I made, it happened so fast I wasn't able to get a mount before the Kentucky Derby that day. I only had the one mount, and that was Gallant Man. And that track is a lot different than most tracks. The finish line is like a 1/16 of a mile further towards the first turn than any track in the country. And that's how I made the mistake, misjudged the finish line.
Shoemaker had lost the 1957 Kentucky Derby by a nose. Even worse for Shoe, he believed it was his error that cost Gallant Man the victory. And handed jockey Bill Hartack the first of his 5 Derby wins.
I think it was the difference. I think I would have won that race if I could have kept riding him hard, yeah.
What helped get Shoemaker through the biggest mistake of his entire racing career was the support of Gallant Man's owner, Ralph Lowe.
Well, he was disappointed, and so was I, because I made that mistake. But the stewards told me they thought it was an honest mistake. They weren't going to take any action. And I went to Dallas, Texas to see Mr. Lowe. And about a week later, I got a telegram from them, the steward, saying that because of the importance of the race and all the coverage, television coverage that it got, they were compelled to suspend me 15 days for making that mistake. And he got mad at, Ralph Lowe got mad at the stewards. And he said, well, I'm not going to run my horse in the Preakness. I'll wait till the Shoemaker gets up and run him in the Belmont. And that's what he did.
Didn't he have a gift for you and all that?
Oh, he sent me a new automobile, a big, beautiful Chrysler, to kind of make me feel a little better, because I really felt bad about the mistake I made. And he waited for the Belmont, and the Gallant Man won the Belmont very easily. In fact, he set what was then the track record.
In the 1958 Derby, Shoemaker was back with the popular late runner from the West Coast, Silky Sullivan. But he would prove to be no match for the winner, Tim Tam, or the 10 others that finished in front of him. Silky's fans wondered what had happened to his big late kick. The shoe knew.
Well, he didn't have it because he was running with the Tim Tam and a couple of pretty good horses, you know. A lot better horses than he had been running with. And the track came up a little muddy that day, and I don't think he liked the mud too much. He probably would have been in the money, but I don't think he could have beaten a horse like Tim Tam.
The 1959 Derby was a great one for the sale of mint juleps. A record 90-degree day and a red-hot finish. The shoe describes his second Derby victory, riding number 8, Tommy Lee.
Well, around the first turn, I think I was laying about third. And I moved up on the other turn from the 3/8 pole. I got in front there, made the lead, and here comes Sword Dancer. And we ran kind of head and head from the middle of the turn all the way around to past the quarter pole. But my horse, Tommy Lee, was trying to bear out. And he bumped Sword Dancer a couple of times, and I think Billy Bowen thought that I was doing it on purpose, but I really wasn't. So he came back into me and bumped me back down towards the rail in the stretch. And it made my horse switch from his left lead to his right lead, and it made me win the race. I got up and beat him ahead.
It was Tommy Lee on the inside by a nose over Sword Dancer after a tough stretch drive. The inquiry sign went up, and for the first time in Derby history, the roses were taken off the winner. The Sword Dancer's jockey, Bill Bowen, claimed foul, but only temporarily. After looking at the film and talking to both riders, the stewards ruled with the shoe. Tommy Lee, bred in England, became just the second foreign-bred ever to win the roses. And the shoe ended his first decade of riding in the Kentucky Derby with his second trophy of the 1950s. In the decade of the 1960s, Bill Shoemaker had 8 competitive Kentucky Derby mounts and was never worse than 5th. He won the roses on Lucky Debonair in 1965 in another photo finish, beating Dapper Dan by a neck.
Well, Lucky Debonair had won the ANITA Derby, and I think he set the track record at that time with mile 8 and 1:47.1. And he was a good horse. Luckily, he had speed. And so I had to get a position all the way, even from the 3/8 pole to the quarter pole. I was right there head and head with the leaders. And then I opened up about 3 at the 8 pole. And here come a Dapper Dan horse there. Dapper Dan is his name. He was flying at the finish. I was so happy when I got to the finish line because I only got their neck in front.
The 60s also saw the shoe lose on 4 Derby favorites. In 1960, Tompion finished 4th as Venetian Way won the roses. Candy Spots was third in the 1963 Derby, beaten less than a length and a half by Chateauguay and Never Bend. In 1964, Bill rode Hill Rise and went off the favorite. He'd had a chance to ride the little Canadian-bred Northern Dancer. Shoe remembers the race.
I think about the three-quarter pole, 3/4 of a mile from home, he was on the inside and I was on the outside of him, and a hole opened up there, and we both headed for it, but his little horse is a little quicker than mine, and he made the hole. I didn't know how to kind of set it, and I think that probably made the difference. Hill Rise probably should have beaten him that year.
Northern Dancer and Bill Hartack beat the Shoe and Hill Rise by a neck in what was a record time for the 1.25 mile Derby, 2 minutes flat. And in 1967, once again, Shoemaker was on the favorite, Damascus, a horse most experts thought couldn't lose.
Right, including me. I thought he was really the best three-year-old that year, and why he didn't win the Derby, he came up in the stretch, he just came up kind of empty, and nobody knows the reason why. Because he went on and he won the Preakness and the Belmont after that, and he was the best three-year-old.
Shoe had just 4 Derby mounts in the 1970s, with his best finish being a second on Avatar in the 1975 Classic won by Foolish Pleasure. As the 1980s arrived, Shoemaker understood that his career was winding down, and now the odds of winning the Roses again seemed long indeed. But then in 1985, Shoe's old pal, trainer Charlie Whittingham, called him to his barn to take a look at a special colt.
Before he ever ran, Charlie said, come with me, we were at the stable. He said, come around the corner here, I want to show you something. And he walked me around the corner of the barn, and there in the stall was a great big old 2-year-old chestnut colt named Ferdinand. He said, see this horse? He said, we're going to have some fun with him. We're probably going to win the Kentucky Derby with him.
Ferdinand didn't win his first race till his 4th attempt as a 2-year-old. At 3, he won the Santa Catalina, but then was beaten 7 lengths in the Santa Anita Derby, finishing 3rd behind Snow Chief and Icy Groom. Ferdinand, Whittingham, and the Shoe were dismissed by the experts at odds of 17 to 1 at Churchill Downs. But once again, the experts didn't know what the Shoe knew.
As soon as he got to Churchill Downs, he became a different horse. He just, like in 1 week, he changed from a baby to a man.
Ferdinand had to be a man in that 112th run for the Roses. Bothered at the start, Shoemaker had to ease the big colt back as he was squeezed into the rail.
Also from the outside, Zabaleta, Snow Chief between horses, then Vernon Castle. Down the stretch for the first time, Groovy has the lead by a length. Zabaleta is second, Bachelor Boat third, a length to Snow Chief fourth. Gap of 4, Vernon Castle fifth, by ahead, Southern Appeal 6.5 length, Broad Brush is 7.
As they came around the first turn, he was dead last in the field of 16.
Bold arrangement is 11. Also from the inside, that Wise Time. They're moving for the turn. Groovy on the inside has a head in front. Zabaleta second, a length. No Chief is gaining ground.
As they moved off the final turn, Shoemaker showed his greatness with a decision that won him his 4th Kentucky Derby.
It came up so fast. It was like a split second. I had to make up my mind, and I knew that I was going for that hole instead of going around, because I figured if I took him around, the crowd noise might make him pull up more. So I was determined to get through that hole. I didn't care. All I could see was the finish line. I was going for it.
And here comes Ferdinand on the rail. In the final furlong, it's Ferdinand getting the lead. On the outside, Bold Arrangement and Broad Brush. Nearing the wire, it's Ferdinand in front. On the outside, Bold Arrangement. Under the wire, Ferdinand under Bill Shoemaker wins the Derby by 2.
The Shoe had won the Roses at age 54, the oldest jockey ever to win America's most famous race.
Well, that was the best one of all, I think, from my regard, because I was in the twilight of my career. I was 54 years old, and I knew I'd never get another chance probably to win the Kentucky Derby. And to be able to do it at that time meant more to me than all the rest of the other derbies did, really. Oh, we went out to dinner that night, Charlie and I did, and had a couple of drinks together, and we were all happy, and I think he bet on him, and I did too, and he paid a big price and made the whole year for me and for Charlie, you know. It was just a great thrill to win the race for him, his first derby, and to be able to do it, you know, as I said, in the twilight of my career, was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me.
On February 3rd, 1990, at Santa Anita Park in Arcadia, California, Bill Shoemaker, the legend, at age 58, 2 years after winning his 4th Kentucky Derby, rode his final race. His 40,350th and final mount was aboard Patchy Ground Frog, number 1A with the white blaze in the shadow roll, who finished 4th. The legend then gave up a thoroughbred for a pony and started a second career as a trainer. And he displayed the famous Shoemaker's sense of humor when asked what it was like to now be training instead of riding racehorses.
Well, I haven't been a trainer very long, about 2 months now, and I haven't run a horse yet, so as long as I don't run one, I'll be a great trainer.
On May 18, 1990, trainer Bill Shoemaker sat out his first starter. His first training win came on June 30th when Tempest Cloud won the 4th race at Hollywood Park. Less than a year later, on April 8, 1991, one of the sport's greatest riders of all time was left a quadriplegic after a single-car accident. Shoemaker continued training from his wheelchair until November 3, 1997, when he announced his retirement from the sport at age 66. As a trainer, he had 90 victories, and his runners earned almost $3.7 million. And as Shoemaker reflected back on his career, on his 8,833 victories, it was always the 4 wins in the Kentucky Derby that meant the most.
When you win the Kentucky Derby, it moves you way up in the rider standings. It makes people think that you are a top rider.
And no one ever thought of Bill Shoemaker as any less.